Yo, what's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another video. This is big breaking news. Sunday, September 11th, Scott Frost has been fired from the Nebraska Cornhuskers football program. And this is some pretty big news. Not really surprising. It was kind of more of a when is this going to happen, not if it was going to happen thing. But we're going to talk about it here in this video. And I'd love to know your thoughts, opinions, and concerns moving forward with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. So, huge news, though, this morning. We're going to read a statement by Trev Alberts, Vice Chancellor, Director of Athletics with Nebraska. Earlier today, I met with Coach Frost and informed him that we were making a change in the leadership position of our football program effective immediately. Scott has poured his heart and soul into the Nebraska football program, both as a quarterback and a head coach, and I appreciate his work and dedication. But after the disappointing start to our season, I decided the best path forward was our program to make a change at the head coaching position. Associate head coach Mickey Joseph will serve as the interim head coach for the remainder of the 2022 season. And as I said, it wasn't really a shock. I thought it would come Monday, to be honest, but they didn't even wait till then. And I even think Scott Frost probably had to know. Again, it wasn't really an if he was going to get fired, but it was when. Basically, he signed a big deal, huge deal, for the Nebraska Cornhuskers back in 2018. He started with UCF, of course, took that program from 0 wins to an undefeated season. They self-proclaimed they won the title that year. 13-0, they beat Auburn in the bowl game. It was a big deal to have Scott Frost come back to Nebraska during the 2018 season, or the start of the 2018 season. But since then, he has gone a horrific 16-31. He has finished last pretty much every year. And, of course, the biggest statistic that everyone knows is, one, he lost a bunch of games by one possession. 22 of his 31 losses he lost by one score. We're going to break down the rest of the season, but I think, like I said, after the game last night against Georgia Southern, that was kind of the icing on the cake. It wasn't really a tough decision after that. The tough decision became, do they want to wait until his buyout became cheaper? So if you don't know, he signed this big deal, 2018. He took a pay cut because he wasn't doing well, finishing last almost every season. And he took a pay cut, and then his buyout option for his contract significantly went down after October 1st. So basically it was, can we survive until October 1st to have a cheaper buyout? And honestly, I think they probably could, because you knew you were going to lose to OU. I think they're going to get killed next week. And then, depending on the timing of it, you probably wouldn't have fired him until after the Indiana game, which would have been October 1st. So theoretically, you could be losing 2 more games. I kind of like the move now, though, because at least you're having a chance to do something and, you know, maybe have a chance at OU. I don't know, something new. And then, of course, the rest of the season. But, again, it wasn't really a shock, because 16-31, you were supposed to be the savior of this Nebraska football program. And, yeah, we're going to go through some of these games. And because they're not good. So we're going to start in 2018. This, I think, really set the tone, and I honestly believe that this changed his entire career. So the reason I'm reporting on this is because I am a Husker fan. I'm a Husker alum. I went to Nebraska, and I was at Husker Vision doing all of the football stuff. I was the replay guy for the big board, and the first game that year, the first game was against Akron, and that game just rained and poured and poured and poured. They did the kickoff and they called the game. And I honestly believe that was just it was the start of the beginning of the end, basically, where you knew something wasn't right. And so they didn't play the Akron game. They couldn't get it rescheduled. They played Colorado the next week, where they lost by 1 score. Again, maybe indicative of what was going to happen. But then I don't think you can entirely blame his entire career on Frost. Here's why. 1, like I already told you about Akron, but 2, Adrian Martinez. I think Adrian Martinez was a great quarterback. He was a 4-star recruit and the first player that Scott Frost ever went out to try to get under his leadership. He was hurt in that Colorado game. They purposely twisted his ankle. He was hurt and really struggled pretty much his entire career, but more so that season and the following season because he was injured. And from there, you're playing with an injured Martinez, and we really didn't have a great quarterback after him. We had Luke McCaffrey, which I was a huge fan of, but you were playing roll the dice, basically. Is Martinez okay to play this weekend? Is he good enough? What do we do with Luke McCaffrey? What do we do with these other guys? So I think those 2 games specifically were really the demise of this program. And then you throw in Troy as well, another close loss to not a great team. And then you get burned badly by Michigan. I mean, those are your first 3 games as a coach. Yeah, like that, it doesn't set the tone well. It doesn't do much for you. And then, like I said, you're playing with fire already from a guy who's hurt, a guy who maybe they should have benched a lot earlier or gotten rid of. Scott Frost had 5 years during his time at Nebraska, like I said. And again, I don't think all of it was his fault. Let's put those 2 issues aside. But then you have COVID, right? You have COVID years that messed up everything. You have last year, which I think was honestly just bad luck, but that bad luck continued for 22 games. Things were out of his control. But realistically, you look at some of these losses. Like I said, in 2018, you look at the losses versus Colorado. You look at the loss versus Troy, 24-19. You look at the loss against Northwestern, getting walked off in overtime. You look at the loss against Ohio State, number 8 Ohio State. What would that have done for the program? Beating 8 Ohio State, losing 36-31. That was on the road as well. And then, of course, losing to Iowa that season, another close loss. What if half of these games went the direction of Nebraska? 2019. You look at some of these games. They beat South Alabama, of course, great. Another close loss to Colorado. A bad loss in prime time against Ohio State. A lot more losses against some other Big Ten opponents. A very, very close loss against Iowa again. These are ranked teams, by the way. 2020, of course, was the COVID year. They only played the Big Ten. They beat Penn State. That's crazy. But then they lost to Iowa. Again, they lost to Ohio State badly. Ranked teams in the Big Ten. And I think it all came down to Scott Frost. He was at one level, the UCF level. Different competition completely. And then last year, just kind of topped it all off. It shows you how competitive the Big Ten is and how you have to be perfect. And from a coaching standpoint, he was not, where he lost 8 games in a row by 1 score. Minnesota, Michigan, Purdue, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Iowa. 4 of those teams were ranked. Of course, you can go back to Michigan State and Oklahoma earlier, before they beat Northwestern 56-7. But 5 or 6 ranked teams that they lost to by 1 score. That is improvement, but you have to be good enough to win some of those games. I'm not saying Nebraska needs to be the best team in the world. They're not going to be ranked. They're not going to do anything, but they need to win some of those games. And then again, is it Martinez? Martinez last year probably wasn't the guy. Why didn't we go away from him? They put all their eggs in one basket, was what I'm saying with Martinez. And now they've got Thompson, the transfer from Texas. Like, he's fine. He's not the greatest quarterback in the world, but the defense sucks. But again, it's not entirely his fault, but somebody has to take the blame. Where if, it's Martinez not being healthy, it's just not recruiting the best, it's losing close games, fumbles. He can't control fumbles, you know what I'm saying? But to somebody's got to take the blame, and of course Scott Frost is going to be the one to take that blame because it relies on a coach making decisions to call plays to win games, and they did not do that. So Scott Frost fired from Nebraska, and as I mentioned, it will be interim coach Mickey Joseph, the first black head coach in Nebraska history for any sport. I think is what my friend Drake said, who is a reporter over there with Nebraska. He's doing some great work, so shout out to Drake there. But yeah, so that'll be so cool and so interesting to see what Mickey Joseph can do. And like I said, maybe they have a chance at OU this week. OU only beat Kent State by 30, so who knows? But I think it wasn't a matter of if, but when. And Nebraska said, we can't take this anymore. We're not going down this road again for the next 2 weeks. Let's make a change. So Scott Frost out as head coach. Again, not entirely his fault. I liked the guy, but I think they gave him chance after chance after chance, and he just never could take the program where it needed to be, especially for Nebraska standards. Is he a good coach? Sure. And I think he could go somewhere, even another Power 5 school, and be effective. But Nebraska, it's a different breed, man. The Big Ten, especially the Big Ten West, where, they don't necessarily have to compete with everyone, over there on that side of the world, Penn State, Michigan State every year. But they do have to compete with Ohio State, Iowa, Wisconsin. It's a different breed. And Scott Frost just couldn't quite handle it. So best of luck to Scott Frost, but we'll see what the program does looking forward. New era of Nebraska football is on the way. See what happens. Bye.